Hey, I recently spoke about something called the dialogue model, which is from a great book called Crucial Conversations and How to Have Them by a group called Vital Smarts. Very great tool I use quite a bit when we talk about interaction. When we talk about, in Australia we have this thing called Are You OK Day, where it's about, having a chat with a friend who you think, are you okay? Asking the question and feeling okay to ask that question. We have this day, it's one day. But essentially, the bigger question is, why aren't people talking about their own mental health? Why aren't they reaching out? And when I've introduced this model in my most recent post, there's this little bit here called the safety. So when we're talking about anything to people that we trust and we know and feel psychologically safe, we can talk about anything. So if I'm feeling particularly bad mentally, people that I do trust, I would feel okay to talk to someone about that. But it doesn't happen. A lot of times people, unfortunately, commit suicide or take their life. Some people like to call it a play on words. I know some people are offended by using those words, but in a nutshell, someone takes their life, chooses to take their own life because they're going through a bad period, but they don't feel comfortable having a conversation with people that probably do care about them. For what reason? And normally the reason is the safety. They don't feel safe having that conversation. So understanding that part of this model, people won't talk if they don't feel safe. Now, whether that safety is in their head or real, it's real to them, right? So understand that as a parent, that if you want to have your kids be able to come and talk to you about anything, that you need to create that safety. You can't say stuff like, oh, suck it up, princess, to your son, or, big boys don't cry, or all these kind of things, right? These little things, tiny little things with children when they're growing up, creates, we don't mean to do this, but it creates some kind of fear factor that dad or mum's not going to validate me because I do cry or I show emotion and all that. So these little things builds up over time, and we don't necessarily mean to do it, but historically, your parents have brought you up a certain way, and as I've said before, we use fear as a motivator for good behaviour or compliance or whatever you want to call that. But at the same time, we also create kids that either get highly aggressive or they get highly defensive. And if you look at this dialogue model, silence or violence is where the conversation goes. So if I'm a highly aggressive person, I'll come out swinging and go, don't ask me how I am, none of your freaking business, mate. That's my aggressive response, right? So that also then pushes people away. They won't ask that question again because for them, the safety of having that conversation has kind of gone. So they go, I'm not going to ask him if he's all right. Right? Now that's his defense mechanism, but it's an aggressive one and it pushes people away. So it creates this conversation again outside of the blue pool. We want the conversation to happen in this blue pool. But if I'm super aggressive towards you whenever you ask me questions about myself, that's me being defensive, but it's an aggressive defensive. On the other side of the coin, if I'm go to the silence part, which is the flight part of it, if you ask me questions, I'm saying I'm fine. I'm not really telling you how I really am. I'm sugarcoating it, or I put on the brave face and all that stuff. So, but that's not me having the conversation in the blue pool. That's me not having the conversation. Saying I'm okay, putting on the brave face, but there's a fear factor there. One of us needs to create the safety, right? So if you ask me if I'm okay and I go either highly aggressive towards you or I just withdraw and I just say, I'm fine, but I don't mean it, and you don't create safety for me in the future, we'll just keep having the conversation on the outside in that silence or violence space. At the same time, if I'm your friend and I'm too scared to have a conversation with you because you bit my head off last time, that's also a problem. So the two of us are creating a safety issue for each other, having a conversation with each other. And so understanding that one of us, if not both, would be better, can try and say, hey, we need to have this conversation. I'm picking up that you're not right. Now, if you're a person that is avoiding that conversation, and I not push you on it, but I do it in a more constructive way. That's where these readings from this article or this book, there's two articles, one's called Dialogue Heals and the other one's called Silence Kills, right? And it's so important that you understand how to have better conversations, how you create safety for your kids, for your friends, and to be a little bit brave. It's not about having you gotta understand that if you create the safety and you keep yourself in a blue brain space, you don't let the emotions take you to the red brain, which is the two defensive parts. So you'll see this common theme through my kind of videos where I talk about red brain and blue brain. If you can have a conversation, and not say take emotion out of it, it's not about, we're human beings, we have emotions, but doing it in a constructive way, pushing past the emotion, if it's a fear of emotion, pushing past that and saying, I'm not leaving you, mate. Right? I know you're not right. You're not up to where you need to be. Let's talk about it. And now I'm trying to create the safety. If I'm thinking blue brain and I'm going to get you into blue brain, because when you go into silence or violence, you're in red brain, I have to think in a way that gets you that way. When I was doing work with the police, you know, that was about how we de-escalate, not go into red and emotions take the better of us. Ask questions of yourself. How can I help Clint calm down and talk to me? If I'm doing that in my own head, I'm starting to stay more in this blue, and I'm trying to think of ways to create safety for you to be okay to have this conversation. That is a skill, and when we get better at that, that'll help us so much more.